anything you'd like to discuss or anything important to you? Like what's going on with Jiggy internally?
Jiggy internally, man. I don't know, man. I don't know where to start. You have to ask me, I guess. But well, nalingaw lang yung ko ba sa the because my two favorite topics, manggod ba, is really religion and politics. These are
Yeah, and
the
mao
kind.
pa jud na kinadaghag diskurso or kinadaghag lalis.
So malingaw jud ko magtanaw ron sa US politics because it's very interesting because kuan man good, like number one, the Philippine Constitution was inspired by the American Constitution, right? In fact, murag gihatag ram to ang ilang atong constitution sa Amerika nato niya murag adjust lagamay ba. So the way society works here in the Philippines is similar to the way the United States works, and I think we kind of predict each other's political moves, political views, political shifts. I think kung obserbaran mo ang American politics and Philippine politics, we kind of mirror each other in a way. So, nalingaw na ko mutanan. So that's where I am now in my life, right? Nalingaw na ko the political movements that's happening right now. Muna siya ba? Muna akong kalingawan niya, of course, mga religious conversations. Nalingaw sa ko magtanaw na niya. One of my favorite debates, of course, is Jordan Peterson versus Sam Harris. There were like there was 3 debates already, and I think I need to see more of that. And I'm also very excited about Yuval Harari. I don't know if you've ever heard of Yuval Noah Harari. He wrote Homo Sapiens, Homo Deus.
Not familiar with him.
So he has a new book out. So ano ba yung mga?
Who else do you listen to sa podcasts? Joe Rogan.
I used to be a fan of Joe Rogan, but because I like the way he asks questions bitaw ba kay murag relatable ba? Murag kaning sa binisaya pa murag kanang common tao kanang murag kaning murag pangutan ng binugo ba? Ano bitaw? Malingaw ko niya atong una pag human I notice nga that's a thing with social media with the internet is that kung nagay mo work ba, if something works, if something goes viral, balik-balik ko na nila, they keep on hammering that ba. So karon nahimo na siya conspiracy theories and daghan na kay mga guests niya kanang mga conspiracy na ba, so rag na turn off
extreme
may
views.
extreme na ba kay sikat man kay siya tanan na yeah, you know you have to feed the beast, right? So kanang wanakay ko na minaw na ni Joe Rogan. So I usually watch just news. I like Philosophize This. It's a really interesting podcast. It's called Philosophize This, and they talk about different philosophers and how it applies to day-to-day life. That's what I listen to when I run, and other podcasts as well. Sam Harris, of course, Making Sense, and all of that. But I'm working on The Tale of Two Cities now. That classic book.
Charles Dickens.
Yeah. So I'm still in the first few pages. So that's a classic that I want to reread. I remember reading that back in college, but I'm reading it again now.
With Peterson and Sam Harris, maside ka ni Harris in terms of your views.
Yeah. I more or less I can kind of agree with Sam, but I love the way Jordan Peterson talks as well. Yeah. I think Jordan Peterson is like the new conservative. I think he's the.
I think he always labeled himself as classic liberal, but yeah, more on conservative and how people perceive him. More on right-leaning, stances.
But he always quotes the Bible.
They're perceived. How he's perceived.
He said that he's a classic liberal. Is that what he said?
I think na ato'y interview na he stated.
That's interesting. Because he always quotes the Bible when he talks. So
I think he was also seeking for a time. Like di man jud niya ma-articulate clearly iyahang views on Christianity or God.
Did you see that
Murag he always gives very long answers
about
Did you
whether
see that? He believes in God or not. Then which one?
Did you see that? I think there was a second debate tagi pangutana si Jordan Peterson. So what's God to you? And he kept on like there was like a 20-minute description.
I think he answered na
20 minutes.
It would take me 48
hours
to answer that.
Yeah.
So it's pretty complex.
Yeah.
But I think now he's leaning towards Christianity more.
Yeah. Okay. But
As opposed to before.
he's always been a Christian, right? He's always been a Christian.
I'm not sure. But murag, he always had vague answers, I think, regarding God. Because I think Christians wanted to pin him down on na Christian ba jud ni siya. So murag lisod siya i-capture ba
Pin down,
if Christian ba jud siya or if middle ground na seeker or something.
Pero mo na ba, kuyawan ko na ba, like,
But he's very articulate with
Yeah,
how
correct,
he
kay psychologist mo na siya, di ba?
expresses himself. But sometimes it comes off complicated. Sometimes I watch him, murag mas mutaas ba? Murag, he can merely simplify it at times. Because me, I would like na simplified ang answers. So mao na usahay murag word salad and but of course he's articulate and I think he's geared towards Christianity na.
Akong kuyawan lang ba is kanang bitong na ay topic nga musikat ka ba? Nga kanang in the same way that Joe Rogan became like a conspiracy theorist ba nga podcast ba kaning kuyawan ko nga basig ilala ng position ilang state kay sikat sila anang position na ba kuyawan ko na I'm weary of that ba na because the algorithm says nga this is good topic to talk about and you become popular and you make more money from this kuyawan ko ba nga asa man tining tinuod begin yung position or
I think mao nang dangers of being a sellout na murag you sell your soul in a way to the devil to get views, to get likes, or to create hype. I think kanang authenticity is hard.
Pero dili man sila inauthentic ba? Akong pasabot is, for example, na topic nga gihisgutan si Jordan Peterson, sikat kayo. Pagbalik diha padung lang siya instead of talking about a broader kaning issue ba? Broader different diverse topics. Magbalik-balik lang siya diha kay sikat man siya ana. You know what I mean? So, but ideas don't live in a vacuum. So kung kana ray mong suryaan, ano siya kanira mong istoryaan lang, why don't you talk about something else? Ano bitaw? If you notice, Sam Harris doesn't talk about religion as much anymore. Dahil naman yung mga topics niya. Kanang murag dili he's graduated from talking about that. So I think that's my thing with Sam Harris is he's already like way past the religion conversation ba.
I think ilahasad ng approach, so it's their style po.
Diba?
So,
ang concern lang, how do we know if sincero ni sila or ngita sila
I
more
don't
views?
think there's way of, but I think you can detect authenticity. Like kana, you had that issue, so you're able to sense that and you have that bullshit meter sad within you. So I think masimhot raman sa jud na sa tao like what this guy's about based on what they project. So makita raman. You'll see through that.
Like mo tana kag Fox News o tana kag CNN, right? Makibaw na ka, padong na sa ilang agenda ba? So you can see the contrast.
I think there's really a subjective narrative that
negosyo
comes out.
The business of it all, the commerce of it all, because Fox News has an audience, CNN has an audience, right? So dili ka maingon nga pro Trump ka kay magsuko ang mga listener nimo, ang advertiser na masuko, you know what I mean? So
part naman jud na.
Yeah.
Whoever's in power will decide unsay narrative or unsa ang leaning or kinsay mo benefit sad or appeal na I think sa whole ball game.
No lagi ba? So there's a danger nga you live in a bubble kay mura may mong ipaminaw, mura may mutan na dili ka people
I think it's
ba?
good to listen from various sources. Then you make your decisions.
But I think you have to qualify various sources, right? Because some people would look for various sources, but pareha ng agenda. You have to look for the opposite of your idea. The opposite. Kanang ba? Counter gid ba? Dili kay kanang na topic niya pag basag line pero pareha ang agenda sila tanan ba? So you're just confirming whatever it is that you believe in.
Yeah, opposing na side. Then you weigh it.
Yeah.
Then you keep an open mind objectively. Kung unsa jud. Kay uban close-minded sad or maura jud ni. That's why I think the open-mindedness plays a role also.
But how
and
do you
the bullshit meter
how do you know
thing
how do you
I was
know
talking about na masimhot unsa jud sakto ug unsay di. But that's hard because we can be misguided, we can be one-dimensional, or we can be in a bubble, as you say, na maura na imong makita. Kay maura man sad ni imong inclination at that point. Maybe you're not seeing multidimensionally or broader.
How do you mentioned open-minded. How do you have an open mind without having your brain falling off? Like, asa makutob imong na ba ni ceiling open-mindedness or wala? So how do you asa man nakutob ang open-mindedness pagkasabi ta? I'm curious about that question. I don't have an answer to that. So, asa man nakutob ang open-mindedness?
Lisod siya. Kay limited ram sad atong IQ, limited ra sad atong way of grasping. So hope for the best.
Kutob ra sa atong educational attainment siguro, di ba?
Pro best na dili ka magpa sweeto if di ka sweeto. I think boils down to that.
Yeah. Sweet. Everybody's an expert now, man. Especially during pandemic, everybody became like an expert on the pandemic.
Yeah.
Because everybody's an expert on gender. Yawan nila.
Daghan na kay mga topics, no.
Makadungog lang og kuan. Mahimo na expert.
Yeah. So I think kana ang as you said kanang not unsa to katong certainty, or you mentioned something about certainty earlier.
One of my slogans, my life slogans is, this is kind of divisive, but para nako.
Or I saw a post you made.
Over certainty is the enemy. Over certainty is the enemy. I think you've got to have a little humility in your life, man. You don't know jack shit. You don't know. We don't know, man.
We don't know, but I think we try also to know.
You try to know for sure.
So it goes both ways.
We try to know for sure, but hindi mo sigurado. Like mo man na may tabo ba, may extremist ka ba nga. You're so certain that you know you're going to heaven and meet 72 virgins. That's what happens to an extremist ba nga. Sigurado naman sila, so they'll do anything for that ideology.
Yeah, I think it's a balance gyapon. Okay, there's dangers of dogmatism. Mao na kanang firm kay ka sa imong beliefs. Yeah, naman say more pragmatic na approach. Pragmatism na sobra ra sad ka flexible. But ang downside sad ana, wala kay baruganan. Or wala sad kay prinsipyo. Or wala sad kay conviction.
But isn't that the whole idea ba nga kanang prinsipyo mo is unmoving? But isn't it true nga nothing man good is murag gamay ra kay butang sa kalibutan mga unmoving ba? Things really change. Who you are today is different from who you will be tomorrow.
Things that are objectively true, and there are aspects that are subjective.
Yeah.
Like, so example, the sky will always be blue, or the world, the earth will always be round.
Says who, man?
Di man dyan
isn't it flat?
Or this shirt will really just be green.
Yeah.
So nay aspects sa atong life na objective.
It's true.
So mao nang objective foundation. So, and there are things that are subjective, our opinions.
We can't even agree on what true is. Basta grabe na kay basta like sometimes like maminaw ka sa conversation but we don't even agree on what truth is.
Yeah.
Can you imagine?
So I think that's why I go back earlier when I mentioned God. I think siya ang objective truth or siya ang objective foundation sa atong kalibutan. Whether it's finding love, finding meaning, seeking what's ultimately true. I think that's where it stems from. Kanang, as to our subjectivities as human beings, then kanya-kanya na sa atong personal na journey.
So it's like the
for
green
me,
shirt.
Ako ang philosophy is a good balance na you have principles, you have convictions that are aligned with objectivity, but you can't be too much of an extremist. So ako balanse man jud ko na nay pragmatism ug nasay idealism. Like you, of course, ideal ta natay values. We want to level up with a set of ideals and principles. But naapoy things na we also need to get along. We also need to be flexible in dealing with many uncertainties of life. Because things come, there are different case scenarios. You can't have you can't just have one way of approaching a certain task or a certain problem. Kay diverse man kayo ang kalibutan. Lain-laig culture, lain-laig belief system, lain-lain og approach. So
So do you think it's
mindset,
it's a spectrum?
spectrum.
Lain ba, like everything is like in a scale ba? Like there's spectrum tanan ba? Like maayo dili
I think the spectrum is very broad,
broad. Oh.
but there has to be some objective foundation.
So you mentioned
in
nga
place.
God is your t-shirt. Nga you said nga objective truth na mo ang God, the idea of a God is your t-shirt, like your shirt is green. Is that what you said?
I said na kining t-shirt green.
Objectively green.
That's objectively green because everyone can see it's green.
But
If someone says that it's blue,
but
mahog bakak na.
so objective truth ni mo ang God is like that green shirt.
That's how I would interpret God na siya ang ultimate objective
But
truth.
so like your t-shirt lagi.
Yeah,
Na green.
Na green. Kay makakita man tanang tao na green ni. Di man ka makaingon na blue ni. Kung mo yung kag blue ni, bakakon na ka. Diba?
So,
there are
how did
aspects,
God become
because
that objective?
Because it can't be too extreme. I mean, people can't be too extreme with their views na mo. Claim sila na same with this whole gender issue, di ba? Na naiuban mo ingon some can't even define what a woman is. Or who can objectively state that this is a blue shirt? No one.
No one. So, but comparing it to a God is kind of taking it too far because we know that this is a green shirt. But when you talk about
as
God,
I said, how I would grasp
how
God,
you would grasp it.
Na ideally siya ang objective truth
okay.
who provided all these
So you want it to
values, moral duties, foundations intact in humanity. Like we can objectively say that sayop mo rape or sayop mo murder, diba? There's a justice system that goes or whoever lies, it's frowned upon. So objectively, as humans, makasense ta ba? Uy, bakakon ni siya.
But an argument can be made that predates God. Kanang mga we're here to survive, not die. So the idea of a God doesn't. You don't need to think of a God.
I mean,
you don't murder because
na justice system sa atong kalibutan ba? And I think that all stems from there's an aim, as I said, that I think geared towards progress and all that.
I don't want to belabor the point, but katong si Yuval Noah Harari, his thing magud ba is one of the reasons why we're such a successful species is our ability to weave stories, our ability to weave myths. That's how we are able to cooperate with all because we can agree on stories. That's his thing ba. So I think one of the reasons why we're 8 billion strong, our species, we're so successful. We have AI and air conditioning and antibiotics and stuff because we're able to cooperate ba. That's why we're successful because we're able to weave stories. So kaning
go on.
Kaning imuhang kanang religion, for example, that is a huge cooperating mechanism ba? Because we agree nga Kristiyano ko, so we can cooperate, di ba? So it's useful. There's so many useful stories, but they don't have to be true. You know, the idea of a corporation, for example, he mentioned, Yuval Harari, a corporation is an idea. If Nike, all of the buildings of Nike burned down, the idea of Nike will still be there. They're just going to build another building because it's just an idea. The idea of money, the most successful story of all time, according to Yuval Harari. Kanang korta ba? It's just a piece of paper, man, that we agree that if I give you this, I can buy a pair of shoes and blah, 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 right? So that's why we're such a successful species because of our ability to cooperate, because we can agree on stories, the story of a corporation, the story of money, and the story of our religion. So useful na ang mga storya ba? I think that's what makes us successful as a species.
But ang main point in what you're saying now is
stories.
Yeah,
stories. No, we're a storytelling species. We are able to cooperate because of the stories, our collective stories. The tribe, for example, our story, our common ancestry.
Atong commonalities.
The idea of a nation, for example, that's just a story. Like, who the hell told us that, we're Filipinos? It's just an idea that we are Filipinos because that's what everybody talks about. That's the story that we tell ourselves. Nga, natao ta diri sa Pilipinas, Pilipino ta. Story ram na ba eh? Like, that's just an idea. Before the Philippines was born, there was no Philippines. There was just a piece of land. You know what I mean? So I think that's why maybe you should try to look him up, man.
I think that took a lot of time po ka ng pag-develop
Oh, for sure, man.
cultures and all these
for sure,
subcultures that we see around us. So yeah.
Kita ba story ram sa diri ra kan sad.
Yeah, so unsa to kay ni shift to from objectivity. So unsa atong main point karon?
The point was the storytelling of
Storytelling.
because you mentioned magod like the idea of God, right? You think that's objective truth, right? It's like your green shirt. You want it to be true, right?
Ideally.
That
Kining whatever created us, this
ideally.
This
so that's your secret wish.
The commonality we have as humans to seek, to fear, that we have a fear for death, to seek meaning, or to have this sense of justice stems from that kanang sense of right and wrong ba sa mga tao. I think kana why explanation, I think gikan na sa creator.
You want it to be.
No, I mean ideally mao na
idea.
Where does it stem from? All these values, all these intangibles, mga love, compassion, all of that. Asam na gikan. Ideally, gikan as Ginoo.
But it could be our just collective ability to create stories, right? It could also be that.
Stories
ba? Like I said, katong kang Yuval Harari's point of view ba nga, it's just a story we tell ourselves.
Na may aspect good na kuan jud dili ma write off as kuan. Like unsa na story exactly?
Like the story of everything, like the story of a God, of religion. Every religion has a
I think it's how we define God karon. Okay, when I say God now, it's very broad. It's just as the life giver. So it's not the religion God or a branded type of God. I'm not referring to that.
But it still has a story, right? Your idea of a God is he has a story or she has a story.
No, akong pasabot kay the uncertain things or the things we can't explain. I would attribute that na ang Ginoo na ang kanang the profound substantive things we see around us, love, intangibles also, kanang family, sense of justice, gikan sa Ginoo. Personally lang na sa ako, asa man gikan tanan. Diba? Kay, siyempre, let's say, na mo patay sa imong anak, diba? Nadyo kay kalagot, ganadyo ka mapriso tong whoever murderer.
Mga ta nakaway, right?
Pero naa kay that sense ba? Asa tong killers akong anak. Murag, asam na gikan.
So why did anybody let that happen? Or did the
what?
The idea of a God allow that to happen? So man, like, well, how would you define such a gruesome idea ng your child dying? Someone like
I mean, that's a sad and really drastic na scenario, di ba? Na matay imong anak or gipatay. So that's a testament to the chaos and suffering we see in our world na injustice or na warfare in a way na you don't know, na evil in a way na ngano na mo patay sa imong anak. Let's say robbery issue rato or timingan imong anak was in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Luck na sad ba? Luck na sad gyud.
Bad luck.
Bad luck.
Malas lang, di ba? Nasya diha. So
but
it's sad ba?
Yeah.
But of course naatay sense of justice na put that person behind bars, hold them accountable, whoever did this wrongdoing. So goes back to what I said regarding sense of right and wrong. It's innate in humanity
innate.
to find the killer or to have.
But does it require
So
Pag yun an idea of a God to not kill.
what?
Does it require an idea of a God to, kung ikaw nga di ka mamatay, kung yung what you're trying to say is kung wala pa kay belief
No,
in a
it
God,
does not
you just
require.
murder away people and kill
Be-
people.
This is the thing. Let's talk about morality.
Oh.
Morality is not necessarily derived from religion, diba? Kaya ang uban ila man na sumpay jud
correct.
na
That's what I'm-
religion ug morality kay connected. Pero no, dili kailangan na God na mao na wrong ni siya. Kay innate man na sa tao to have that sense na sayop man mang rape, sayop man mamakak without the God thing, without religion. Kay innately human, pero I'm saying ganiha, asa man na gikan that sense na sayop ni sakto ni.
So there has to be a main source.
So personally, kanang main source, I would attribute that sa God. Not just discussing religion, maybe it's how we're defining God now that's creating some confusion. Pero no, it doesn't have to be like God in that way that it's defined or how I perceive you defining God. Pero na-stem ba on goes back to sense of right and wrong and I would attribute that to
a God figure.
the giver of life, life giver. Maybe sa pag-define lang sa God mo na medyo confusing.
So he's always been there. He's always been there, that idea of a life giver. He's always been there, or was he created also?
Creator, life giver, I think Nadia. As to the personal aspect, that's what I said na I wrestle with that. Because I think naman joy sensing ang tao. Otherwise, life is just fully absurd niya. Wala, nothing matters. But that sense of naay meaning ang kinabuhi asa na gikan. I'm not saying na ay God na ay murag genie na overlooking our actions, intervening. That's the wrestling. I think that's more into deism. Deism is naay God pero dili siya he doesn't intervene in his actions. Pero naasay mga theists na who believe that he really does intervene in our personal
Daily
affairs. So that's where it gets tricky, and that's where I think we get lost sometimes in vocabulary and in our definitions.
Words, man. Sometimes you really can't define it and say it in words, but sometimes.
Okay, Osay, you throw out the word God, it can be very
so many things attached to it.
It can mean to you something else and it can mean something else for me. So lain-lain jud ba. So it's important to find that concrete definition before we engage into further dialogue.
No, you have to define the rules when you have a conversation like that. Imong
hindi klaro
nimo
ang unsay pasabot jud. Like karon as we have that discourse, mas na klaro ba, mas na ay dialogue, mas na ay clarity. So kana.
Absurdism. And isn't absurdism, you mentioned absurd, absurd, isn't it nga, the world is actually not absurd?
I think life is absurd. Kanang katag bitaw. There are things.
It goes back.
Life is uncertain, absurd. Daghan kay tag di makitaan, daghag mahitabo na di ka katuo mahitabo.
Mo lagi, so it goes back to the chaos theory na ko ganiyabay nga. The natural set point of the universe is chaos. It's not absurd, but it is absurd because we imbue it order. Muna siya, I think that's what absurdism is nga. We think life has to be in a certain order, but that's not the way of the universe. It's supposed to be chaos. It becomes absurd because we think it's supposed to be a certain way. Muna atong pananaw absurd, but it's not absurd. This is how it's supposed to be. That's what I think absurdism is, more or less.
Okay. Sige, going back.
I really want to go to philosophy school. Man.
Kay, as I explain kaning mga ako ang personal take, maura man na ang personal take na gubot ang kinabuhi, pero kita as humans, we seek meaning, we want to level up, career-wise, whatever. We want to raise our kids right. So we hope for the best, and we aim higher constantly. That's the ideal. Ako maybe that's my personal ideal. That, and I'm not imposing that on anyone, but that's just my personal take na lisod ang kalibutan, lisod ang kinabuhi, pero maningkamot ta with hopefully with some guidance, with some firm foundation on how we orient ourselves to the world. Kay lisod man sad, like we orient ourselves niya. Katag ang kalibutan niya. Nadalong lang ta. Walay character development. Kay naman say character development. That's why there are so many series or movies out there na yung mga interesting characters ba. And we really root for them because we see na ay growth. Like kinesya sa una, talawan kaayo or bayute kayo. Nya isog na din kayo towards the end of the season. And nasa yung mga tragic figures na
Darth
talented unta pero he went south. So na yung mga ingana bitaw na aspects.
You mentioned earlier nga life is hard, and I propose nga life is beautiful. Life is good because it's hard. Because had life been easy, it would not be beautiful. It would not be hard.
I would agree because the meaningful things, as I said, is embarking on difficult things. What makes life meaningful, I think, is doing difficult things, doing them well. Like, di ba mo believe man kag tao who are able to thrive. Like
you mentioned Manny Pacquiao, di ba?
We usually, that's one example that we look up to people who are able to overcome adversity, who are able to thrive under pressure. Kanang mga figures na who are able to do difficult things, not everyone can. And yet they can excel and move forward and level up. So I think diha jud na makaiyon ka, a life that is meaningful is embarking on these difficulties, these hurdles that we face. Who do we not look up to so much? Kana mga aimless individuals, di ba, na floating around and not setting a good example. Well, generally speaking, kay case to case man jud na. Pero generally speaking, there are personalities and figures that we aspire to be like.
Maybe we can see ourselves in those individuals pa. We see ourselves succeeding and thriving. Kanang like bodybuilder lang ba yun? Like, di ba? Like, it's hard to grow a muscle, but once your muscle tears, mukuan siya, grow siya. Like, even on the physical level ba, hard things allow your body to grow.
It goes back to responsibility. Taking responsibility. Like example, pabaya ni mo imong balay, wa kay buhaton. Siyempre maguba ang CR, ang di mabayran ang kuryente, it will break down. Same with your car. If di nimo ipa-service, walay under, maguba, di ba? Same sa atong lawas, pabaya tagkaon. We don't watch our diet, we don't get checkups. It goes south also. So there's really something to work on constantly.
And that's beautiful, right? I think
that's how I would do God's will, is to play my part, do my responsibilities. Never mind mga aspects na di pa ko ka-grasp, although trying, but we play our part sa makaya.